Birds are by far the most exciting animals that we share this planet with, and for a variety of reasons they're really fascinating and engaging to us. They're everywhere we go. They're conspicuous and unbelievable in their behaviors, and they're remarkably sensitive to changes in the environment. So along with being fun to watch and pay attention to, they're excellent indicators of what's happening in the world that we share with them. From changes in populations to birds like the bald eagle and the peregrine falcon and the brown pelican in the 1960s and 70s as a result of the unintended impacts of DDT, all the way down to the countless birds injured in collisions with cars around our world. Birds are telling us about our impacts, large and small, to the environment we share with them in ways no other animals can. Through a variety of means, the Center for Birds of Prey has been working to identify and address these environmental issues through paying attention to birds. Since 1991, we've provided medical care to over 10,000 injured birds in our medical facility. We've provided educational programming to students around the Low Country and beyond. We conduct a number of research and conservation initiatives looking to identify what's happening in birds and ultimately to be able to utilize that to better serve the environment that we share with them. We realized very early on in our work that simply caring for injured birds, while it does provide a number of them with another opportunity in the wild, it doesn't solve the problem that brought them into our medical facility in the first place. In fact, we've seen more birds every year in our medical clinic than the year before. And so what we realized was that ultimately we needed to share the information we were gathering from each of these cases in our hospital with the people in the community that could ultimately make a difference. We're not going to change behaviors unless people understand that their behaviors need to be changed. Education is a huge part of the work we do here at the center, and we're very fortunate as educators to have some of the best tools that any educator might have. I have a great respect for teachers in the classroom who teach challenging subjects like algebra and calculus and science simply with the tools at their avail. Here at the center we utilize birds as our educational tools, and when folks see these ambassador birds, their attention is immediately caught, and we're allowed to then explain some of the things that we're learning in our medical facility, talk about some of the hard things that we need to talk about, some of the behaviors that we might need to change. So this is a red-tailed hawk, one of our more common patients in our medical facility, probably the most common daytime hunting bird of prey in North America, one that most of you will have seen at some point or another. We see them a lot perched on utility poles beside our roadways here in the Low Country, which is a great hunting habitat for them, with the exception of the fact that there's cars whizzing by at 70 or 80 miles an hour. Most of our birds here at the center are what we call raptors, grasping-footed, curved-beaked predators, birds that are catching things like squirrels and rats and mice and smaller birds and eating them. Red-tailed hawks are primarily mammal hunters. Gray squirrels make up a huge proportion of their diet here in South Carolina. So these are birds we often see perched on utility poles beside the highway, hunting for small mammals that they might find in the median. Unfortunately, while that does appear to the bird as an excellent and suitable hunting habitat, the traffic often can cause problems. This bird, like many others every year, was involved in a collision with a car. And as you might notice, he's missing one of his eyes. For predators, birds of prey, as well as humans for that matter, binocular eyesight is a very important component in their ability to capture prey. Without both of his eyes functioning properly, he wouldn't be able to survive. So, he is one of the lucky ones that has joined us as an educational ambassador. And this bird allows us to bring an amazing wild animal right up close to students and to allow them to see some of the amazing features and talk about some of the cool adaptations of these birds, but also to talk about some of our impacts on them. It's easier to understand the impacts of car collision on wildlife when you can see what such a collision did to an animal like this one. Red-tailed hawks are a common feature throughout most of North America. The red tail is a great indicator. If you see it, that rusty red coloration is an indication of an adult red-tailed hawk. That dark band of feathers across the belly is also a great identifying feature. That curved beak is a great adaptation that we see in all of the birds of prey that they utilize to tear their food into smaller pieces. One of the unique opportunities we have here at the center is to allow people to see these birds in free flight. This is a bird that's been trained with positive reinforcement to fly when our trainers ask him to. One of the groups of birds we focus on quite a bit here at the center are the vultures. This is a turkey vulture, which is one of our native vultures here in South Carolina, and a species that we know is being impacted by a number of human activities, from car collisions to some others that maybe are a little less obvious. We also know that vultures around the world are in crisis. This is a great example of a species where many of its relatives in other parts of the world are endangered or critically endangered, and those parts of the world where vulture populations have declined are now dealing with a variety of other impacts as a result. One of the first things we do with vultures that are admitted to our medical facility is test them for elevated levels of lead, and we see an alarming percentage of them that test positive for elevated lead levels in their blood. As an obligate scavenger, vultures are a little different than the raptors. Bald heads and walking feet. Often folks are a little put off by vultures simply because they're bald. We know that it's an adaptation, though, that for them is highly effective in staying clean, and also it's a way that they can communicate with one another. Many of you may associate that red head with turkey vultures. It's a common association, but you may not know that only adult turkey vultures have that red head. So by being bald, they're able to see the color of the skin on another vulture's face and consequently be able to identify whether that other bird is an adult or not, whether it would be a suitable mate or a competitor, or maybe even just who to follow in order to find food the next day. The adults are more qualified at finding food given their experience than the juveniles might be. It's a common sight throughout the low country, the turkey vulture, one of our two native vultures, one of the most graceful birds in flight as well. Burrowing owls are a North American native, not one we would find too commonly here in South Carolina, but a bird that does occasionally end up here. They're a migratory owl, which is a little different than most owls that stay in the same place year-round, but they are a bird that as their name suggests, they spend a lot of time on and under the ground, and consequently they have some problems. They depend on tunnels, in many cases dug by other animals, things like groundhogs and prairie dogs, and unfortunately some of those other animals are not the most popular with humans. Also, they're dealing with a number of issues related to habitat loss, primarily in their western populations. Some of the places where they would historically have nested are being developed into human neighborhoods, and in some cases there are conflicts between those two uses. So it's a species that is incredibly charismatic. They're a lot of fun to talk about, and one that has some interesting challenges that they're facing today out in our world. So one of the biggest challenges with dealing with wildlife in terms of a medical circumstance is the fact that they're very easily stressed by humans, and so we often have to use anesthesia to get them to a state where we can do what needs to be done. We use an inhaled anesthetic to put the bird under anesthesia so that then we can address whatever issues they might have. This is an osprey. Interestingly, the first patient in our medical facility way back in 1991 was also an osprey, but this is an osprey that was admitted to the hospital after being found down in a yard in Beaufort County, Ladies Island area. Our initial examination, we found a fracture in the radius of the left wing. Also a few lacerations. Not certain exactly what happened to cause these injuries. In many cases, it's obvious what causes an injury. A bird found near a highway or a bird entangled in fishing line. This bird was found in a backyard, not really near a roadway that would indicate a car collision, but potentially involved in an altercation with another bird, maybe a bald eagle, maybe another osprey. You also have to continue to keep the range of motion. One of the challenges with the injury like this one is that with lack of movement in that wing, they can sort of freeze up in those joints. So we have to use physical therapy to keep that joint moving. Osprey are a common bird around the water. This is a bird found actually all over the world. Every continent, with the exception of Antarctica, has osprey living on it. They're a universal fishing bird. So this is a bird that was admitted about a week ago, had that surgical procedure done to the wing, and now we're doing a follow-up radiograph. So we use a lot of the same tools that you would imagine being used in human medicine. When the center was founded 30 years ago, one of the main drivers was the need for someone in the community to care for birds like this osprey who were injured, primarily as a result of human activities. Birds were accidentally injured through collisions with cars and windows and through entanglements and discarded lines and nets. Unfortunately, they were also intentionally injured in some cases through deliberate harming from shooting. In nearly every case, the birds admitted to our medical facility are suffering from injuries caused by our activities. The goal in our avian medical clinic has always been to provide the highest level of medical care available to these birds with the intent of releasing them again to the wild whenever possible and minimizing their suffering whenever a full recovery is not possible. Since 1991, we've treated well over 10,000 birds, and your support will continue to allow us to treat birds from all around the Low Country and beyond. Pin, an IM pin we call it, a pin that's actually inside of the bone in the wing there, inside the radius, holding it in alignment, again to allow those two pieces at the fracture site to stay both in alignment and to allow them to have the contact that they'll need to heal properly. Following the surgery, about 4 to 6 weeks with the pin, and then an additional few weeks of physical therapy, and ideally, if all goes well, this bird will be able to be released for a second chance. After taking a weight measurement on the bird, Frankie's now going to provide him with some hydration through fluids delivered under the skin in his leg. Again, it's important to keep that wing immobilized during the healing process. And so this bandage will help to keep the bird from moving that wing and causing additional injury at the site of that fracture. In the wild, mom or dad would incubate the eggs and keep them warm all the time and manage them, but sometimes mom and dad either don't do a great job of incubation or could use a little bit of help. We can control a lot of variables here in an incubator facility. We can control the temperature and the humidity and the cleanliness of the space, and it allows us to have a little greater success than we might if we left the parents to do all of the incubation. So we've got a variety of eggs in our incubators, and actually right now we have an owl that is getting ready to hatch from an egg. Actually, he's been working his way out of the egg for the last 2 days, since Sunday when he externally pipped, broke through the shell of the egg, and now the hope is that we can maybe help him out of the egg a little bit and get him out into the world. One of the challenges with assisting a bird in an egg like this is it's not as simple as just cracking the egg and out they come. Eggshells, birds in the shell have a vascular network that provides them nutrients as they're growing, and before they can break through that vascular network, they have to sever those blood vessels so they don't bleed when they crack through the shell. And so Audrey had to make sure before she started picking at the egg that the bird had indeed moved through the vascular network so that it would be safe to then come in and assist a little bit. That yolk in your chicken egg that you eat for breakfast, that yellow part, that's the nutrition for the developing embryo. So generally they're using most of it up during development, and then right before they hatch they absorb the rest of it through what we call the umbilicus, which would be their belly button essentially. And that happens at the very end of the development process, and so you need to make sure that that's happened before he comes out, or else he could have some problems related to it. So Audrey's peering in there. Let me know if I can help.
I just took away the eggshell and left the membrane at first so that we can kind of slowly pull back the membrane, making sure that any of those last vessels are inactive and not to rush.
Can't put them back in the egg once they come out. Although we might wish that we could put them back. Isn't that right, McLean? Yeah.
Sean said he's taped them back in before.
Oh, really?
They didn't absorb the yolk, and so yeah, I taped it back.
Taped it back.
Shoved it back in.
Oh, that's funny.
It's a little blood vessel that's kind of red there. Didn't break it. It's still kind of attached. Oh, you pushed. Back there. It looks like he's gone to the bathroom, which is a good sign that he was probably gotten far enough along. Membrane is still. May have gotten stuck right here with membranes. And stuck.
His beak is just sticking out.
It's way over his face like he's supposed to, but it's not. I was hoping he might push with his ears or swings. I don't know. Do some pushing with his feet. rests a good bit. Even though I helped, that was an exhausting process for them there. Back up until we can get some squats together too.
38.6 grams at hatching. As an adult, this bird, if it's a female, it will be as large as a kilogram, so that's 1,000 grams. If it's a male, just a little bit less. So at this stage, we're going to clean that umbilicus. That's the equivalent of cutting the cord, so to speak.
It's a little protruded and his abdomen's a little distended.
A little bit of triple antibiotic ointment on there.
You can almost see the yellow in the abdomen, that the yolk that's in there, right in between those feet right there.
That yolk will be the food for the first few days of this bird's life.
It's warm. Dry out here.
We manage a collection of about 120 birds here at the Center for Birds of Prey that we utilize in our overall educational pursuits. These are birds from all over the world. Some of them are birds like the turkey vulture or the red-tailed hawk that are birds that were injured in the wild. Some of them are birds from other parts of the world. We understand that these issues are not unique to South Carolina. We have a variety of birds that we utilize to teach. And again, they're a fantastic educational tool. They allow us to essentially capture the attention of anyone. They're hard to ignore, birds are, especially when they fly right over your heads, which is a really remarkable thing we're able to do here at the center. Your contributions on Palmetto Giving Day will help the Avian Conservation Center and the Center for Birds of Prey continue to provide medical care for injured birds at a rate of over 1,000 birds a year. Your gifts will help us to prepare for and mitigate our impacts on the environment, from car collisions to contaminant spills. Your generous gifts will help us to provide educational programming for students around the Lowcountry and beyond to help them understand what birds are telling us about the environment that we share. Finally, your gifts will help us to dig deeper into the lives of birds and the lessons that they may be teaching us through the mysteries of their amazing behaviors and the impacts of our actions on them about the world that we share with them. Thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you for your generous contributions here on Palmetto Giving Day.